Hey everyone, this is Dimitri with Star Moment Photography. Thanks for joining me again to talk about gear. So this evening we are actually going to just talk real quickly about cheap versus expensive gear. Is there a difference? Should you save up money to buy more expensive gear? Is it going to make that big of a difference in your photography to get a $2,000 lens versus like a $300 lens? And the answer is really, it depends. It depends on what you're going for. It depends on your budget. It depends on a number of factors. So today I have with me just a couple of lenses to kind of illustrate my point between cheap versus expensive gear. So the first lens that I have with me today, so we have the Canon 50mm 1.8 lens. This lens is it's a very, very inexpensive lens. It's $125, I believe, at the time that it dropped, and it's now you could probably get it for about $110 or so. I have to check, but this lens, it's a great entry-level lens for those who want to start branching out and like getting more out of their camera, getting more out of their photography. Because with that wide open 1.8 aperture, you're gonna be able to let in a lot more light than the standard, standard kit lens zoom, which normally they're around 3.5 to f4 at their widest aperture. So this opens up the gateway to a lot of creative shots, and in the hands of the right photographer, it can downright get some very, very award-winning and creative shots, depending on if you know how to use it. So now we have this lens. Now, like I said, this was a $125 lens, and as you can see, the size is very, very compact. It's very portable. So we have this on one end of the spectrum. Now, if we go to the other end of the spectrum, we've got the super expensive 50mm 1.2. So now you can see that this lens here is massively different from the Nifty 50. It's so much bigger, not just in the size and weight, but this lens is also more than triple the price of this lens, with it weighing in at about $2,300 brand new at the time of purchase. So it is by no means a cheap lens. It is actually very, very, it has a very high cost of entry to be able to get this lens. But the optical quality is unmatched, in my opinion, out of all 50s on the market currently. Currently, the only lens that is, in my opinion, able to rival this is like the Zeiss 50mm 1.4. Now, does that mean that I can't get good images with this 50mm 1.8? By no means. I can get a matter of fact, I have gotten very, very great results with this lens. And this is the point that I want to make with this talk tonight, is that gear doesn't matter so much that it is the photographer behind the camera that matters the most, because you could give a average photographer the 51.2 and give me, say, the 51.8. In basically, what would happen is my images will turn out much better than the person who is using the more expensive gear. And why is that? Because I know how to utilize my lens's strengths and weaknesses. So that is one of the things that people don't stress enough with photography, is that they only tend to focus on the strengths of a lens, and they don't focus on what the weaknesses of each lens is, and they don't figure out how to compensate for those weaknesses, or how to make those weaknesses work for you, or work for them rather. So for example, I did a wedding a couple years ago, all natural light. I didn't have a strobe on me, and so I had the wedding couple. They were out. We were out in the sun, bright sunny day. There was no clouds, so I had to backlight them and I had to use a reflector to kind of give them to, light them from the front. And what ended up happening was with the 50, it has a very strong weakness to lens flare. So that means that when the sun is hitting it from a backlit position like that, it's going to create some very, in many cases, very ugly and unflattering lens flare. However, if you know how to utilize the lens and angle yourself properly, you can actually create some very, very interesting and very lovely lens flare that complements the image, and it won't look ugly, and it's something that I can create naturally without having to go into Photoshop. A lot of other photographers will need to go into Photoshop to create this interesting lens flare. So now the same thing goes for the 50mm 1.2. One of its weaknesses is that because when you're shooting wide open at that f1.2 aperture, if you're not careful where you're nailing focus, you are going to get messed up images. You're going to not have perfectly in focus images in the areas that are critical. Because that narrow 1.2 aperture, it has such a narrow depth of field. So we have to take that into consideration when we are picking gear. We have to pick gear that we know the strengths and weaknesses of. You need to be able to know what will work best for you. Now, I'm an advocate of buying the best gear that you can afford. So what that means is that if I have money, let's say we have three lenses. We have a 50mm 1.8, a 1.4, and a 1.2. If I have the money to be able to afford the 1.4 over the 1.8, but I may not be able to get the 1.2 yet, I will either save money to get the 1.2, or if I'm satisfied with a 1.4 aperture, I will just buy the 1.4 over the 1.8, because even though the 1.8 I could save the most money on, for me, it's not about the money savings. It's about the final image, the final product that I'm trying to deliver to my clients. I want them to be able to have the very best image quality possible. And me, as a demanding and discerning photographer, I want to be able to have that crisp, sharp image. I want to have that ultimate image quality without any compromises, and I'm willing to put down the money to do it. Now, that's not to say that you have to do that model. You don't have to do that at all. You can get great images with that less expensive gear as well. And in ways, it forces you to challenge yourself more when you're using that less expensive gear, because you are more limited. So it forces you to have to become more creative to overcome those lenses' weaknesses. So that being said, gear is not so much the deciding factor in your photography. It is you. You have to be the one that is willing to put in the work and the time to learn your craft and be able to work it out in a way where it will work for you, the gear will work for you, and you're satisfied with that gear. Because at the end of the day, if you're not satisfied with the gear that you're shooting with, then you're not going to go out and get great images. So you gotta make sure that you're satisfied with what you're shooting with. So I just wanted to touch on that today. Just a quick video today, nothing too long or fancy. Oh, and also, if you guys notice, I don't got the fro anymore. I decided to go ahead and do the locks. I went ahead and got dreaded up yesterday, so I'm starting my dreadlock journey. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I've never had locks, so let's see where this goes. So that's it for today. We're at the end of this video. So if you guys haven't, go ahead and like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you haven't followed me on Instagram, my Instagram handle is @StarMomentPhotos. And my website is www.starmomentphotos.com. Alright guys, that's it for today. Thanks, and you guys have a great evening.